exclusive podcast for those of you that are Patreons to my channel. And if you're hearing this right now, that means you are a Patreon. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for subscribing to my channel and your viewing and for becoming a Patreon, as I am looking to make some big improvements on the channel, and I can only do that with your help. So again, thank you very much. All right, today I have quite a few guests here. Of course, many of you that are frequent listeners and viewers of the YouTube channel know these guys, so go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, it's me, Larry the Lion.
Hi there, this is Alligator.
Hello, I'm Humphrey the Wolf.
Hello there, everyone, it's me, your old buddy Red the Fox. Hey, it's your turn.
Oh yeah, hello there, my name is Mumford.
All right, guys, thanks for stopping by to help out today.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. It gets me out of the retirement community. Yeah. Who are you guys again?
Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. First thing we have to talk about today are some corrections that were pointed out to me by a loyal supporter of my channel, that being my friend Dave, the gentleman who loaned me his cart of In Pursuit of the Pink Panther so that I could make that episode. He's also like a living, breathing Atari price guide. Yeah, I mean, he knows the prices for like everything that's Atari related. So he did find a couple goofs that we made, so let's talk about that right now. All right, as many of you know that are followers of my channel, that my two episodes, the rare and valuable Atari 2600 games, part 1 and 2, are my most viewed episodes of all. However, my friend Dave pointed out some goofs in there that I hope have not cost anybody some money. As sometimes prices for different things can be inaccurate, especially when it comes to collectibles, because as a former collector of baseball cards, comic books, stamps, and lots of other things, I can tell you that prices fluctuate up and down like a yo-yo. So if 1 week or 1 month or something, the price is one thing, it can change. And also, you don't always know if the information that you're getting is accurate. So Dave, being a living, breathing price guide, he was able to help me out with some of the information relating to these games that I'm going to share with you now. All right, then, let's go back to the first episode. Now, for instance, the first is Atlantis 2. Now, I had said that the game was worth about $200. Dave said the lowest he has ever seen it sell was for $800. And if you happen to have, then again, that's just the cartridge. If you happen to have the complete game box all together, it runs usually about $3,000 to $5,000. Oh man, that's a lot of money for a game there. But yeah, you got to remember that game was only, a prize for people that sent in their high scores for Atlantis. So you would have to get a really, really high score, and then they would send you the special edition of Atlantis 2, to see who could actually get the highest score of all time. Did you ever try for that? I love the game, but I wasn't that great at it. So, actually, I have the ROM, of course, and if you play Atlantis 2, you see that it's pretty much just Atlantis 1, or Atlantis just a lot harder, a lot faster. So, okay, so next up we have Air Raid. Now, Menavision, the company that made it, did not go out of business after Air Raid was released. As I had been told, it was released by Mena Jewelry and Toys that was located on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. The store was in business for many years after Air Raid. Okay. The auction listed for Air Raid is for 3,000 is not an Air Raid but a Zonte cart. Now, be very careful about these Zonte carts. They pop up all the time on eBay. Now, Zonte carts are blue, and the seller put Air Raid in the title to get views. Now, keep in mind that these Zonte carts are almost like rewritable cartridges. They were floating around a lot, and people do sometimes try to pass them off as the originals. They take the ROM and put a rare game in there and say, this is the game. So be very, very careful and look out for those. The Zonte carts, you can find them. Like I said, they're just weird, like baby blue colored things. If you look at the episode, you'll see it. So be very watchful of those when you see those on eBay, because those are actually rewritable cartridges. Now, if you happen to get the complete game, the complete box is sold for about $31,000 a few years ago. Yikes. Yeah, especially that game wasn't much fun either.
No, it sure wasn't.
Yeah, that was the one with the bad hit detection and stuff. So, all right, next up we have Eli's Ladder. That was that Christian educational game I discussed. Now, he pointed out to me that it actually goes for more than $100. He says a loose cartridge will actually run you between $800 and $1,500. Now, also keep in mind that the price I put in there was one that I saw. It was actually for sale on eBay. It was going for around $100. At least that's what the auction started at. By the time it ended, it probably was around $1,500, because when that game pops up on eBay, it just goes like really, really fast. Now, the high number that he said $1,500 would be if you have the paperwork with it. As I pointed out in that episode, Eli's Ladder when you bought Eli's Ladder back in the day, it came with all kinds of charts and stuff because it was an educational game. So, now this next one is one that I highly recommend you guys really, really watch out for. Pepsi Invaders. The picture that I had was of a repo cart, a reproduction cart. Now, these are popping up all over the place. Now, keep in mind that there are evil people out there that will take ROMs of rare and expensive games, put it on a cartridge, and try to sell it to people for really high prices. That is like one of the meanest and underhanded things that people do. Now, because of people like that are greedy bastards, sometimes people that have the ROMs of very rare and expensive prototypes, or just very valuable prototypes, I should say, they don't want to release them to the public because of people like that. So, I don't blame them in a way. Yeah, especially me, because, like, I'll tell you, I really would like to play, like, that bear game that they advertised on Atari Protos. I would love to try that out.
Yeah, me too. I mean, also, I know you've been looking for that Mark of the Mole game, because the Residence game.
Oh, I sure have, and I know somebody's got it out there somewhere, but I don't blame them, because that's just really underhanded and dirty. Oh yes, I mean it's almost as bad, if not as so, of those people you see at the flea markets that are selling bootlegs. Yeah, pretty much, but they always end up getting busted anyway. But then they're back a week or two later. Anyway, now the original cart is an Atari style with no labels on it, just a blank cart. I've seen those. They're usually like black with nothing on them. The auction that I talked about is a reproduction cart, and sometimes those go for high prices, even though they're just pretty much custom made. I mean, you can download the ROM pretty much anywhere. So the original box that came with it, you can actually, if you get it, the original box was actually a plain white box with a sticker that says Atari goes better with Coke. Now, if you can find one of these, and these are extremely rare because they were only, I think, less than 100 of them were made. A loose cart of the original goes for around $1,000 to $1,500 in a box. Loose. And the box copy goes for about $3,000 to $8,000. Oh, that's a big price difference from that reproduction there that guy made for $400. Yep. All right, now this next one, I tell you, For Chase the Chuck Wagon, it's really hard to believe that people actually pay this much for that game. A loose copy usually is about $75 to $100. Now, if you happen to have all of the goodies with it, it goes sometimes for around $500. But to be perfectly honest, I can't even imagine paying 75 cents for that. Oh, me neither. It's just, wow. That is definitely an example of a game that is worth a lot of money, but it was terrible. Okay, the next one we have is Gauntlet. Now, this, of course, we're not talking about that really fun RPG Atari game that all of us love. We're talking about that rare game that was discussed in the video with the guy running in the tomahawks and stuff coming to hit him, and he's got to carry the glass. Now, this game was usually only found as a chip only. Finding them in a cartridge is extremely rare. When Answer went out of business, they sold the remaining chips that were not used. There are only a few copies known in the cart shell, and they usually go for around $2,000. Yeah, that's interesting too. Now, that game was very imaginative. Oh, I agree. It was definitely one of a kind. I mean, you don't really have games, not even just the subject matter, but just the way you're running through there and you duck and you have, it's a very unique game. I have to agree with you on that, but definitely not worth $2,000. Now, this game here is one that I just did not understand. That was that Malagi. Is that how you say it? Something like that. I don't know. I believe so. Oh yeah, that was the one with the Italian mama and stuff that the guy's she keeps feeding him food till his stomach blows up. That was the one. Okay, now according to this email you got there, they say a loose copy usually runs about $300 to $400. And a boxed copy is about $4,000 to $6,000. Talk about a big price jump there. Wow. Yeah, you said it. Okay, now we did point out a couple other things in the second episode that we did. Like I said, I'm adding these corrections in here for you guys so that if you get a chance to purchase any of these games, you kind of know what you're getting into, and just a couple very important hints because I hate to see anybody get ripped off. All right, now Lockjaw, we talked about that. That was that shark game. It usually goes for about $300 to $400 loose. Now boxed, it goes for anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000. Now the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. Now this one runs about $175 to $250, and boxed it goes anywhere from about $500 to $550. Yeah, now that game there was interesting. I mean, how many games do you play where you get to beat a villain? I mean, you get to be Leatherface. I mean, who could ask for more? Yeah, I mean, it would have been kind of unoriginal if it was you being like Sally and you're running away from Leatherface. I mean, that would have been kind of unoriginal. Okay, now next up we have Halloween. It was made by the same company, and it's a little more rare than Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it goes around $200 to $300 loose, and about $550 to $600. Now, Dave put this in here that they are both the most bootlegged games for the Atari 2600. You need to be very careful when buying. If in doubt, when you see an auction on eBay, if you're ever in doubt, ask someone that knows, because people will sell all kinds of bootlegs on there. Like I said, the Zante carts, even though the Zante carts are pretty valuable themselves, those reproduction cards, they are kind of valuable, but to market it as something it's not, that's highly unethical. So again, if a deal it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So ask an expert. All right, next we have Gamma Attack. Believe it or not, there are only about 2 or 3 copies of this game in existence. Yeah, and that game there was one that I didn't really like either. Yeah, the same thing there, I tell you. That was a game that I kind of could pass on, that's for sure. And he says, once in a while you see them on eBay, and those are copies of the originals. So in other words, we have copies of a copy. There were 3 numbered releases. The original would sell for at least $10,000. Yeah, again, same thing. If you're seeing a copy for sale on eBay, remember it's a copy of a copy, or even a copy of a copy. So keep an eye out for that. Vulture Attack. Oh yeah, that was that game there. I didn't like that either. Yeah, I really, not many people. Yeah, I tell you, that was bad. Again, it was an Ultravision game that were kind of rare. When they went out of business, now originally the game was called Condor Attack, and when they went out of business, they sold it to K-Tel. K-Tel relabeled the cards. Some of them had the Condor Attack label under the Vulture Attack label. Now, the 4-graphic label is the label that Funvision used in Europe on all of its titles. Okay, and K-Tel was actually affiliated with Funvision. And again, you can't get these games in America anyway. You could get them, but if you plug them into your Atari, you're going to be disappointed. Unless you have a PAL television or one of those. There's some kind of way to do it, isn't there? Yes, there is a way that you can actually do it, but believe it or not, it will run you into quite a bit of money, so it probably isn't worth it. Okay, and next, again, we have Tooth Protectors. Now, I had said that this game didn't come with a box, and he said it actually did, but the box is styrofoam with a Tooth Protectors paper strap over it. Okay, that's interesting. But again, that game was kind of cool. That was that one where you were, trying to stop. You had to, take the mouthwash to the teeth, and you had to shoot them things. It was kind of a cool game, and it runs about 1,500 to about 3,000. So again, thank you, Dave, for that valuable information, as I really do not want any of my listeners or anybody to be ripped off.
All right, now we're going to talk about some upcoming episodes of the Classic Gamer 74 YouTube channel. Now, we're going to have to do a AVP Limited Part 2 because there were a couple games that didn't quite make it into the episode.
That's correct. We can't always get all of the games into an episode because of time restraints. I don't want the episodes to be way too long. So, therefore, I don't put all of them into that I plan. I usually will plan ahead and have several games and then maybe about 5 or 6 make it in. So, that's true. There will be a part 2.
Also, we got to finish up the sports series. We're going to have a series on an episode on soccer, one on tennis.
Oh, yeah, and this one here is really fun on the games.
What do you mean, the games?
The Olympic Games.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are about 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 Olympic Games that we're going to talk about there.
And, then we're going to have one on boxing.
And, of course, we've got to do one on wrestling. So there will be like a wrestling games episode where we will discuss games from the late 80s to today. All right, Mumford, you've been awful quiet for... Mumford.
Sorry about that. I kind of dozed off there.
You want to give some of the upcoming episodes?
Oh, sure. Now, where'd you leave off?
With the sports series.
Oh, yeah. All right, so another thing we're thinking about doing is an episode or 2 or 3 about the Mario legacy. Starting back in the Donkey Kong, where we first saw Mario. And in Japan, he was called Jumpman up until current. That's been 40 years almost now that Mario's been around. Not as long as me, but quite a while.
You got a point there.
Next, and we're going to have some children's learning games, another episode about that, because, believe it or not, they actually did make some pretty cool learning games for the ColecoVision and Intellivision. And what's also going to surprise people is that they actually had one learning game that was made for the 5200 that was not released. And the prototype was just released, about a month or so ago, so you're going to want to not miss that one.
Oh, for sure. Then we're going to at least have one more rare and expensive Atari 2600 games. I got a few more on that list for that one. We're going to have a card game episode. You'd be surprised how many card games, of course, we're talking about. Gambling card games like poker and blackjack. You'd be surprised how many of those games were actually made in video game format. Again, same thing with the board games. I mean, even though a deck of cards will usually run you like $1 or $2, and you can pretty much buy a deck of cards everywhere that sells anything, you don't want to take the chance of losing cards, bending them, or tearing them. So, hey, why not just do it in a video game?
Yeah, and then we got a really cool one coming up called Arcade Games That Were Never Ported. These were really cool arcade games that we all picked out and loved, but they were never put out in video game, and they were never put out in. What was I saying? They were never ported. Oh yeah, that's it. And again, we're not talking about homebrew because there were a couple people that made homebrew ports of these arcade games and you want me to go on from there? Yeah, go ahead. I think he's kind of tuckered out for now. Okay, then we got we're gonna have a martial arts game series where we're gonna talk about some of the early martial arts games, and then the quest type side-scrolling ones or platform ones, and then we're gonna get into the fighting games. So that's gonna be a multi-part. Yep, and then we're going to have a few more AVPs, actually quite a few more, because, there were some really cool games that were ported in quite a large amount. And I think, in one, you're going to really be shocked how many times this one game was actually ported. I mean, it was ported out on just about every game system that ever existed. And also, we're going to discuss a long-lost console that was released in the 70s for a brief time that pretty much got forgotten. Luckily, I was able to get a hold of an emulator of one, and I got some really cool game footage. It was called the Fairchild. I'll give you a hint. That's about, Fairchild Channel F. It was a really cool, short-lived game system, but it was pretty cool. I mean, it kept score. It had sound effects. And I have all of the games that were made for it. I think you guys are going to really love that. That's coming up pretty soon. We're also going to have some guests. Guests that aren't puppets like these guys here. I'm going to have some real live guests. I don't know about interviews. I think that ship has kind of sailed. The last interview I did just didn't turn out well, and it just didn't get many views, and I think that was it. I think that pretty much ran out of gas. Although I had talked to a couple people. We'll just have to wait and see. We're going to have we're going to have several more homebrews and hacks, as there are quite a few that were not talked about in a previous, in the previous lists, especially as now I'm talking to a couple creators online right now that have some really cool hacks and homebrews, that have not got large distribution, and they're kind of just testing out on people. So I will have those on there. And of course, prototypes, last of all, which is probably one of our biggest commodities here on Classic Gamer 74. There will be probably one more Atari 2600 prototypes. It's really hard to believe that, well, not really hard to believe, it's just in a way sad that there were so many prototypes and so many great unreleased games for the 2600. But again, that was because of the 83 and 84 game crash. But what's going to really surprise you is that there were prototypes and unreleased games for systems that came later. I was really shocked with the large numbers of prototypes for the NES, and you will be too. So those and a whole lot more are coming up in later episodes. Well, before we close today, I want to thank each and every one of you for subscribing to my channel, for becoming a Patreon, and the kind words, the constructive and not so constructive criticism that I get from you guys. It's really been a lot of fun. It's been a little over a year now that I've been doing this, and I have really been enjoying myself. So again, on behalf of Larry, Al, Humphrey, Red, and Mumford, I want to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for your support, and thank you, period. So we will be trying to do one of these about every 2 weeks. Yeah, and I tell you what there, if you guys, you forgot one more rumor. What's that? You forgot to tell people that we thinking about doing some merchandise here shortly. Oh, that's right. Go ahead and tell them about it, Al. Okay, so what we got going on there, we're going to talk about getting some T-shirts, mugs, hats,
coasters, I don't care. Whatever I can put Classic Gamer 74 on by Gumbo, we going to get them for you. So be looking out for announcements on that. Okay, Al, thank you very much. And we will be having a podcast probably about every 2 weeks. And again, it's our way of saying thank you for our Patreons. Also, don't forget we're going to be having some more extra game footage, some playthroughs on here. And I'm looking at possibly doing a blooper video because, of course, I make mistakes like everyone else. So on behalf of Larry, Al, Humphrey, Red, and Mumford, I want to say thank you. And we will see each and every one of you in our next podcast. And, of course, once a week on our YouTube channel. So thank you and have a good night.